Our Valentine's cabin. Getaway turned into a reunion with my fiancé's dead ex. The snow was falling in thick, lazy flakes outside the cabin window, and I remember thinking how perfect it all was. The fireplace crackled, the wine was chilled, and my fiancé, Derek, was looking at me with that soft, adoring expression that still made my stomach flutter after 3 years together. Valentine's weekend was supposed to be our escape from the chaos of wedding planning, a chance to remember why we were doing all of this in the first place. But then we heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside, another car, in the middle of nowhere. My first thought was that someone was lost. My second thought, when I saw the woman stepping out of the vehicle, was pure, cold dread. Because I recognized her, not from photos or stories Derek had told me. I recognized her from the gravestone I'd visited with his family 2 years ago. She was supposed to be dead. The cabin belonged to Derek's uncle, a retired professor who'd built it himself back in the 80s. It was rustic but warm, all exposed beams and creaky floorboards and a stone fireplace that took up half the living room wall. When Derek first suggested we spend Valentine's weekend there, I'd been hesitant. Our wedding was in 4 months, and the to-do list was a mile long. But he'd looked at me with those earnest green eyes and said, "Avery, we haven't had a real weekend to ourselves in over a year. Just us. No venue coordinators, no family drama, no seating chart debates, please." So I'd agreed. I'd packed my favorite sweater, the one with the chunky knit he always said made me look cozy, and a bottle of the expensive red wine we'd been saving for a special occasion. The drive up the mountain had been treacherous, the winding roads coated in a fresh layer of ice. But Derek handled the SUV like he'd been driving through blizzards his whole life. He was like that with everything. Calm, capable, steady. That's what I loved about him. He was my anchor. Now, standing at the window and watching the snow pile up against the glass, I felt that familiar sense of contentment settle over me. The cabin was warm, smelling of pine and wood smoke. I'd lit candles on the mantel, flickering little flames that cast dancing shadows across the walls. Derek was in the tiny kitchen, humming something off-key as he opened the wine. It was simple, but it was ours. "I can't believe we actually pulled this off," I called out, not turning from the window. "You know my mother predicted we'd end up snowed in at her house, eating leftover casserole with my aunt's dog." I heard Derek's low laugh, that rumbling sound that always made me smile. "Your mother has zero faith in my planning abilities." I'm offended. She has zero faith in everyone. It's her love language. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. His breath was warm against my ear. "Happy early Valentine's Day, Avery." I leaned back into him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest. "Happy early Valentine's Day. Now, are you going to tell me what the surprise is, or do I have to guess?" He'd been hinting for weeks that he had something special planned for Saturday night. A gift, he'd said, that he'd been working on for months. I'd tried to pry it out of him over dinner last week, but he'd just grinned and told me to be patient. "Patience is a virtue," he teased. "Patience is overrated," I shot back. We were laughing, the sound echoing off the cabin walls when I heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel, slow, deliberate, a car pulling up outside. Derek stiffened behind me. "Are you expecting someone?" I shook my head, frowning. "I thought you said this place was impossible to find." "It is. I had to give the rental car company specific directions just to get the SUV up here." We both moved to the window, peering through the frost-kissed glass. A dark sedan was parked just beyond the porch, its headlights cutting twin beams through the falling snow. I watched the driver's door swing open, watched a figure step out into the swirling white. It was a woman, tall, dark-haired, bundled in a heavy wool coat. She stood there for a moment, staring up at the cabin, and even from this distance, I could see something vulnerable in her posture, something hesitant. "Who is that?" I whispered. Derek didn't answer. His hands had fallen away from my waist. When I turned to look at him, my blood went cold. His face had gone pale, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the woman outside with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, yes, but also something else, something that looked almost like grief. "I need you to stay calm," he said, his voice low and strained. "Stay calm? Derek, who is she?" The woman started walking toward the cabin, her boots leaving deep impressions in the fresh snow. I watched her climb the porch steps, watched her raise her hand and knock on the heavy oak door. The sound was muffled, gentle, but it hit me like a hammer blow. Derek didn't move. He was frozen, his hands clenched at his sides, his breathing shallow. "Derek," my voice was sharper now. "Who is she?" He turned to look at me, and for a moment I saw something raw in his eyes, something broken. "Her name is Veronica," he said, and the words seemed to cost him something. "She was my fiancé. Before you." The world tilted sideways. I gripped the back of the armchair to steady myself. "Your fiancé? You told me you'd never been engaged." His hand went to his hair, that nervous gesture he always made when he was stressed. I know what I told you." "It's complicated, Avery. I didn't know how to explain." "Explain what?" The knock came again, more insistent this time. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. tears. Is this some kind of joke? No, I promise you. This is not a joke. He took a step toward me, his hands outstretched. I didn't even know she was alive. She died, Avery. I went to her funeral. I watched them lower her coffin into the ground. Then who is that woman on the porch? The door swung open before Derek could answer. The woman stepped inside, her coat dusted with snow, her dark hair glittering with ice crystals. She was even more striking up close. High cheekbones, full lips, eyes that were the color of winter sky. And she was very, very pregnant. "Hello, Derek," she said, her voice soft and trembling. "I know you probably never expected to see me again. I'm sorry about the surprise, but I didn't know where else to go." I felt the floor drop out from under me. My legs went weak, and I sank into the armchair, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A dead woman. A fiancé I'd never known about. A baby that was obviously on its way. Derek stared at her, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. "Veronica, I don't understand. You died. I saw you die." She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, you saw what I needed you to see. I had to disappear, Derek. I had to protect myself. And now I need your help." The fire crackled. The snow fell. And I sat there, frozen, watching my fiancé's past walk back into our present in the worst possible way. The fire popped and hissed, sending a shower of orange sparks against the glass screen. The sound was jarringly normal against the chaos that had just flooded the cabin. I sat rigid in the armchair, my fingers digging into the worn fabric, watching the woman, Veronica, stand in the middle of our romantic getaway like she belonged there, like she had every right to shatter the carefully constructed life I'd built with Derek. Derek hadn't moved from his spot near the window. His face was a mask of conflicting emotions, shock, confusion, and beneath it all, something that looked terrifyingly like recognition. He knew this woman. He'd loved this woman. And now she was standing here, very much alive, very much pregnant, asking for his help. "I think you need to start from the beginning," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. Because right now I'm sitting here trying to reconcile the fact that my fiancé supposedly watched his ex-girlfriend get buried, and yet she's standing in front of me with a baby bump. Veronica turned to look at me, and there was something almost apologetic in her expression. "You must be Avery. Derek mentioned you in his letters." His letters. The words hit me like a physical blow. He'd been writing to her while we were together? I shot a look at Derek, and he had the decency to look guilty. "They weren't love letters," he said quickly. "They were, I don't know how to explain it. Closure letters. Things I needed to say to her that I never got to say before she died. Except she didn't die," I said flatly. "No." Veronica's voice was quiet, heavy with old pain. "I didn't die. I faked my death. And I've been living under a different name for the past 5 years. But I need you to understand I had a reason. A very good reason." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. I watched the snow accumulate on the sill, piling up in thick white drifts that seemed to seal us in this cabin. This moment. This nightmare. There was no escape. The road was impassable. The phone signal non-existent. We were trapped. "Then explain," I said, crossing my arms over my chest. "Because I'm not going anywhere until I understand what's happening." Veronica pulled off her coat, revealing a simple gray sweater stretched taut over her belly. She moved slowly, heavily, sinking onto the worn sofa across from me. Derek remained standing by the window, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands kept clenching and unclenching at his sides. "5 years ago, I was engaged to Derek," Veronica began, her eyes fixed on the fire. "We were supposed to get married in the spring. I had the dress, the venue, everything planned down to the flowers. I was happy, really happy. But then I started noticing things." "Things?" I prompted. "His family." She glanced at Derek, and something flickered between them. His mother, specifically. She was always around, always involved, always making decisions about our lives. She'd show up at our apartment unannounced, rearrange my kitchen, tell me I wasn't feeding Derek properly. At first I thought she was just overprotective, overbearing. But then I found out she'd been monitoring my phone calls, reading my emails. She'd hired someone to follow me. I felt the blood drain from my face. She what? "It started small," Veronica continued. "I'd get these weird texts from unknown numbers asking where I was, what I was doing. Then my bank account was drained, $15,000. Gone. The police said it was a cybercrime, but I knew it wasn't. I knew it was her. She wanted me gone, and she wasn't subtle about it." Derek finally spoke, his voice strained. "Veronica, I know you didn't know." She held up a hand. "That's why I did what I did. Because I knew if I stayed, something worse would happen. I'd already found the paperwork in her office. Life insurance policies, a trust fund that would only release if Derek married someone from a list she'd approved. I wasn't on the list." I stared at her, trying to process the enormity of what she was saying. Derek's mother, that elegant, polished woman who'd welcomed me into the family with open arms, who'd offered to pay for our wedding, who'd sent me flowers when I was sick. Was it all a lie? Was I just another replacement in a pattern I didn't understand? "Where did you go?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "West Virginia. I had an aunt there. a woman my family had cut off years ago for marrying outside the church. She took me in, no questions asked. I changed my name, got a job, started over. I thought the worst was behind me. But then I found out I was pregnant. Whose baby? I asked, and I knew the question was cruel. But I needed to hear the answer. Mine, Derek said, and his voice was so quiet I almost missed it. The baby is mine. The confession hung in the air between us, heavy and unforgiving. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. The shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he couldn't quite meet my gaze. This man, the man I'd trusted with my heart, had been hiding a child. Hiding an entire life. You told me you'd never been in love before, I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. You said I was your first serious relationship. I said you were my first healthy relationship, he corrected, and the distinction felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Veronica and I were a disaster. Her family, mine, all the pressure. We were young and stupid, and we made terrible decisions. But the baby? I didn't know about the baby. Veronica nodded slowly. I tried to tell you, Derek. I left a letter with your aunt, asked her to give it to you after I was gone, but she must have never passed it along. Of course she didn't, Derek said bitterly. She's my mother's sister. They run in the same pack. The fire crackled and popped, filling the silence. I watched the flames dance and thought about the wedding I'd been planning, the life I'd imagined, the future that had seemed so certain just hours ago. Now everything felt uncertain. Fragile, like I was standing on a sheet of ice that could crack at any moment. So what now? I finally asked. What do you want from us, Veronica? She looked at me, and there was exhaustion in her eyes. Real bone-deep exhaustion. I need somewhere safe to stay until the baby comes. I've been running for 5 years, Avery. I've changed my name 3 times. I've worked dead-end jobs, slept in my car, eaten ramen noodles for weeks at a stretch. My aunt passed away last month, and I have no one else. I know it's unfair to show up like this. I know it's the worst possible timing, but I'm terrified. She found me again. Who found you? Derek's mother. Veronica's voice dropped to a whisper. She hired another private investigator. I got a call from my landlord last week saying someone had been asking questions about me, and then I found a photograph taped to my front door. It was a picture of me, taken through my kitchen window, standing in front of my stove. There was a note on the back, written in the same handwriting I'd seen years ago on those threatening texts. It said, "Come home or I'll come get you." The cabin suddenly felt colder. I pulled my sweater tighter around myself, but it wasn't the temperature that chilled me. It was the thought of that woman, Derek's mother, my future mother-in-law, stalking a pregnant woman across state lines, terrifying her into silence, orchestrating the death of her own son's fiancé just to maintain control. She's dangerous, Veronica said, as if reading my thoughts. I've been telling myself for years that I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that there was no way she'd actually hurt me. But I was wrong. She sent me to the hospital once. A car accident that I know was her doing. She tampered with my brakes, Derek. I almost died. Derek's face went white. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was scared you wouldn't believe me. I was a stranger to your family, and she was your mother. Everyone thought she was perfect. I brought it up once, right before the wedding, and you told me I was being dramatic. You told me she just wanted what was best for you. The accusations hung in the air, unspoken but deafening. Derek looked stricken, like he was seeing his past through fresh eyes. I watched the realization wash over him, the recognition that he'd dismissed the woman he loved, sent her running, and in doing so, lost everything. I'm sorry, he whispered, and I could see the tears forming in his eyes. Veronica, I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't change what happened. Her voice was gentle but firm. I don't blame you. You were a kid caught in the middle, but I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for your help. I need a few weeks of safety, just until I can figure out my next move. Then I'll be out of your lives forever. I watched Derek struggle with her request. His eyes kept flicking to me, searching for permission, for guidance, for something I wasn't sure I could give. Because how do you make a decision like this? How do you weigh the safety of a woman carrying your child against the trust of the woman you claim to love? Avery? He finally said, his voice raw. I know this is impossible. I know I've failed you, but I can't turn her away. I can't. Not when she's this scared. Not when that baby is mine. I closed my eyes, and for a long moment, I listened to the sound of the wind and the fire and the quiet, ragged breathing of 2 people waiting for my answer. The snow kept falling outside, deeper and deeper, burying us in this cabin, in this moment, in this impossible choice. Fine, I said, and the word felt like a surrender. She can stay. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a much bigger nightmare. Because somewhere out there, in the dark and the snow, Derek's mother was looking for her, and it was only a matter of time before she found us. The night stretched on like a wound that wouldn't close. I lay in the cabin's loft bedroom, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me. The wind had picked up, howling through the eaves like something alive. Below, I could hear the low murmur of Derek's voice and Veronica's occasional soft responses. They were talking. Of course they were talking. They had years of silence to fill, a child to discuss, a past to untangle. I should have been furious. I should have been screaming, crying, throwing things. Instead, I felt hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out all the hope and trust I'd built over 3 years and left nothing but a cold, echoing void. When I'd finally escaped to the loft, Derek had tried to follow me. I'd stopped him with a single look, the kind that said, "Don't you dare." He'd gotten the message, retreating back to the living room where Veronica sat by the fire, her hands cradling her belly like she was protecting the only good thing left in her life. I couldn't blame her. I couldn't even hate her, no matter how much I wanted to. She was a victim in all of this, just like me. The real villain was out there somewhere, hidden behind a mask of elegance and philanthropy, plotting her next move. Sometime around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I tensed, expecting Derek, but the figure that appeared in the doorway was smaller, rounder. "Veronica, can I come in?" she asked softly. I sat up, pulling the blanket around my shoulders. "Sure." She moved slowly, carefully, lowering herself onto the edge of the bed. In the dim light from the window, I could see the exhaustion etched into her features, the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her skin, the way her hands trembled slightly when she folded them in her lap. "I know you probably hate me," she began. "I don't hate you." The words surprised me, but they were true. "I don't even know you. How can I hate someone I don't know?" "Fair enough." She managed a weak smile. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. When I found out Derek was engaged again, I almost didn't come. I told myself I'd figure it out on my own. But then the photograph showed up and I got scared, really scared. And I ran out of options. I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. All I saw was fear and exhaustion and a deep, aching sadness. "Why did you leave him? Really leave him? You said it was because of his mother, but there had to be more." Veronica was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I didn't trust him to protect me. And that broke my heart more than anything else. I loved Derek. I loved him so much it hurt. But when I told him about his mother, he dismissed me. He made me feel crazy, like I was making it all up. And I realized that if I stayed, I'd spend the rest of my life fighting a battle I couldn't win. I'd always be second place to her." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut because they echoed something I'd been feeling for months. The subtle ways Derek would defer to his mother, the way he'd brush off my concerns about her interference in our wedding planning, the way he'd say things like, "She just wants to help," or "That's just how she is." I'd ignored the red flags because I loved him, because I wanted to believe he was different. "I've been seeing the same signs," I admitted quietly. "The way she tries to control everything, the way she criticizes my choices, the way she makes me feel like I'm never good enough. I thought it was just me being insecure. It's not you." Veronica reached out and placed her hand on mine. "She's been doing this for decades. She'll never stop. The only way to win is to leave." I pulled my hand away, a surge of anger rising in my chest. "You don't get to tell me to leave my fiancé. You don't get to decide my future just because you gave up on yours. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just telling you the truth." She stood up slowly, bracing herself against the bed frame. "I've been where you are, Avery. I know how hard it is to walk away. But I also know what happens if you stay. I almost died, and I don't want that to happen to you." She left as quietly as she'd come, disappearing down the stairs and leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat in the darkness, staring at the empty doorway, and felt the weight of her words settle over me like a shroud. Dawn came slowly, pale light filtering through the frost-covered windows. I must have fallen asleep at some point because I woke to the sound of Derek's voice downstairs, sharp and urgent. "Veronica. Veronica, wake up!" I scrambled out of bed and rushed down the stairs, my heart pounding. Derek was kneeling on the floor next to the sofa, his hands on Veronica's shoulders. Her face was pale, beaded with sweat, and she was clutching her stomach. "What's happening?" I demanded. "I don't know." She said she felt dizzy and then she collapsed. Derek looked up at me, his eyes wild with panic. "We need to get her to a hospital. Now. Have you seen the snow? We're completely snowed in. The roads are impassable. Then we do something else. I don't care what it takes." I grabbed my phone, cursing when I saw the 0 bars in the corner. "No service." "We're cut off," Veronica groaned, her eyes fluttering open. "It's okay. I think it's just Braxton Hicks contractions. I've had them before." "Are you sure?" Derek was stroking her hair, his voice trembling. "You fainted, Veronica. That's not normal." "I'm fine. I just didn't eat enough yesterday." She tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "I've been so stressed lately. My body just gave out." I stood there watching them, this intimate tableau of fear and concern and shared history. Derek was holding her hand. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. And I realized, with a clarity that cut through me like glass, that he still loved her. Maybe he'd always loved her. Maybe I was just the placeholder, the safe choice, the woman who didn't come with a complicated past. I'd given him 3 years of my life, my heart, my future, And in one night, it had all been reduced to ashes. "Derek," I said, and my voice was cold. "Can I speak to you alone?" He looked up at me, startled, like he'd forgotten I was there. "Avery, now." He followed me into the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the creaky floorboards. I turned to face him, and for a long moment, I just looked at him. This man I'd planned to marry. This man I'd given everything to. "Did you ever love me?" I asked. "Really love me?" His face crumpled. "How can you ask me that?" "Because I need to know. Right now. And I need you to be honest with me, Derek. For once in your life, I need you to tell me the truth." He ran his hand through his hair. That nervous gesture I'd always found endearing. Now it just made me angry. "Of course I love you. I proposed to you. We're planning a wedding." That's not an answer. "You proposed to Veronica too, and look how that turned out." I stepped closer, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I know you still love her. I saw the way you looked at her when she collapsed. I saw the way you held her hand. You've never looked at me like that. Not once. Avery, that's not fair or fair." I laughed, and the sound was bitter, hollow. "Fair was thinking I had a future with you. Fair was trusting you when you told me you'd never been engaged. Fair was believing I was enough, and you took all of that away from me." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me. Please. Please don't do this." His voice was cracking, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I know I messed up. I know I should have told you the truth. But I love you, Avery. I want to marry you. Then why didn't you tell me about her?" The question exploded out of me, raw and ragged. "Why did you let me walk into this blind? Why didn't you warn me?" "Because I was ashamed." His voice was barely a whisper. "Because I thought if you knew the truth, you'd leave. And I couldn't bear that. I still can't." The honesty in his words was almost worse than the lies, because I could see the pain in his eyes, the genuine regret. He'd made a terrible mistake, and he knew it. But knowing he was sorry didn't change anything. It didn't undo the years of deception. It didn't give me back the trust he'd destroyed. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, and my voice was steady now, resolute. "We're going to get through this weekend. We're going to make sure Veronica is safe and that her baby is okay. And then I'm going to leave. I'm going to go back to the city, pack my things, and I'm going to disappear from your life, just like she did." "Avery, no." "Yes, this is not up for negotiation." I took a deep breath, holding his gaze. "You made your choice the moment you decided to lie to me, and I refuse to spend the rest of my life wondering if I'm just another chapter in your unfinished story." The look on his face was something I'd never seen before, complete and utter devastation. But I couldn't let myself feel sorry for him. Not now. Not after everything he'd done. "I'm going to make sure Veronica is comfortable," I said, turning toward the living room. "We can figure out the rest in the morning. But this conversation is over." I walked away before he could respond, and as I passed the living room, I caught Veronica's eye. She was watching me with a mix of sympathy and understanding, like she'd known all along this was how it would end. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I gave her a small nod. "So am I." The hours that followed were a blur of quiet tension and forced civility. Derek tried to make breakfast, burned the toast, and gave up. Veronica and I sat in silence, watching the snow continue to fall, burying us deeper in this nightmare. At some point, I found myself thinking about my mother, about the wedding dress I'd chosen, about the life I'd been so excited to build. All of it gone now, vanished like smoke. By evening, the storm had let up. Veronica was resting on the sofa, her color improved, her breathing even. Derek had retreated to the porch, his silhouette visible through the frosted window. I watched him stand there, alone in the cold, and felt nothing but pity. I'd loved him once. I'd loved him with my whole heart, but love wasn't enough. It had never been enough. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cabin floor, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to let Derek's mother win, or Veronica's tragedy become mine. I was going to survive this. I was going to rebuild. And somewhere, out there in the vast, uncertain world, I was going to find a love that didn't come with secrets and lies. Tomorrow, when the roads were clear and the snow had melted, I would leave. And I wouldn't look back.